Hi, I'm Tasha Rose and this is Radical Mothering. I just wanted to do a really quick intro to this video to get you guys to click the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you get all of the information about when we post new videos. My husband is going to be joining us on this channel now, and we're going to start with this video, which is his conversion story. He came into the Catholic Church at this past Easter Vigil, and we had children baptized, and it was just this whole big thing. So I want you guys to hit the subscribe button because we've got a lot of really great stuff that we're going to be sharing with you guys in the next few weeks and then going forward. And then go to our Instagram and Facebook page and hit likes and follows over there as well, because we're going to be posting a lot of different things about what we've got going on, thought processes, the journey that we're on now, in addition to the content that you've already come to expect from this channel. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, and enjoy the video. Thanks.
Travis and Paul Joseph, be sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit. Peace be with you.
I am here with my husband Travis today and Cecilia, who you'll meet in a different video, so she's not even here.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Coming soon.
So we're going to talk today about Travis's conversion story. He just came into the church this Easter Vigil, for those of you who don't follow me on other social media. And we're very excited about that. And this video, as well as my reversion video, are going to kind of be the catalyst for a channel reboot and the direction that we're going to take this channel going forward. So I will, I guess, turn it over to you. Let's
Yeah, well, I guess just following on that, I think that it's interesting to note that we've talked back and forth over the years about recording our conversations or having a little bit more involvement, and I think that I've been hesitant about it,
Mm-hmm.
and part of that's because I have been uncertain about who I am and what I'm doing, and afraid to be, to kind of be public about the things that I think and talk about, because I don't have a framework about who I am and what's guiding that. But now coming into the church, like, this is real, and I feel like I have a real sense of identity and belonging, and that's really important. And it's something that I've been looking for a really long time,
Yeah.
and that's why I'm excited to share my conversion story, because it's something that I've been waiting for my whole life.
Well, and I can say that journeying with you for our whole relationship, but particularly through the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years, watching you open up a little bit more about what you believe outside of our family values, what you believe, and in a public way, mm-hmm. has been really amazing, because there have been challenges that have come with that, but you've become I don't know, this sound weird, more of a person,
Right.
you know, and it's been pretty incredible. And then this past year, you know, I've said to a lot of people, if anybody had asked me this time last year if I ever thought Travis would become Catholic, I would have laughed at them.
Yeah.
Like, it just never would have happened, because you're kind of the skeptic. So, but then that also makes sense to me, being a cerebral person myself, and knowing how many skeptics there are in the world who have become Catholic upon really evaluating it. Mm-hmm. You know, it also makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that's really exciting. Well, what I will say is that this has definitely been sort of conversion is a life's journey, and one of the things that really meant a lot when I started RCIA back in the fall, we were given a prayer just from the teacher, and it was at the Cathedral of St. Paul, because that's where St. Agnes, our parish, partners with them for the classes. And so there's a new faith formation director there, and he's great. He's a former Anglican priest, actually. And so he's now he's converted to the Catholic faith over the last few years with his family. But he shared a quote and a prayer, and he kind of incorporated it using some of St. Augustine's language. And that language is that our hearts are restless until they rest in God. And that spoke to me so much, because I have been aware for years now that I've been searching for something real and tangible and truthful about what to believe, both spiritually, religiously, morally. What are the practices that should be observed? So I think that part of the reason for that is because I grew up with a separate family. My mom and my dad were never married, and so I had actually two different spiritual guides when I was growing up. In a mother and a father, it wasn't a unified family spiritual guidance. And so on my dad's side, I got evangelical Christianity, and on my mom's side, I got pagan, Native American, earth-based spirituality. And two very different viewpoints, religiously and spiritually. So it was, for me, there was no, because picking one over the other would be like betraying, either my mother or my father, and that was a conflicting thing, obviously. And this is why having a unified, family unit is really important for children, definitely. But for me, it was. I wouldn't say that I regret having had the experience. I think that it's meant a lot for me and been really helpful, because God doesn't make mistakes, and so and I know that, and I've always known that. I've always known that there was no mistake that I was being raised the way that I was, or had the experiences that I've had, but it was definitely challenging. So on my dad's side, I was learning about Christianity, and I think certainly my aunt and uncle too on my dad's side. Were great examples about living strong, out loud, faithful Christianity in the evangelical manner, and I say evangelical. That's sort of the group, and I know that that it's not necessarily considered a group formally. It's belief in Christ. They're Christians, and that's how they talk about it, and that's fine. But I was never really given much of an introduction to any specific denominations growing up, but it was just belief in Christ. And then on my mom's side, there was the idea of spirituality, and my mom told me that she believed in a female God, and I thought she was talking about Mary. She said sort of, but not exactly. And later on, I learned that there's an idea of the God and the goddess, the Mother Earth goddess, spirit sort of idea, and then Spirit of the universe has been something that's been meaningful to me over the years. But really what I got from that upbringing with those two competing spiritual viewpoints was that ultimately it didn't matter what I believed, just as long as I believed in maybe something. And I always did. I always believed in something. I was always open to some sort of belief. So it was just as long as I believed in something.
Right. So would you say that those two competing spiritualities were really just kind of superficial too? It was not anything that was really in depth for you? Like no real in-depth training in how to believe?
Yeah, that's a good point. And we've talked about this, but I think I was really given just some broad overview or outlines about what the belief systems were, but I was never given any specific spiritual practice and spiritual training and regimen. I mean, there wasn't a lot of formal example or expectation of any kind of specific practices.
Right, so no expectation of going to church on Sunday or church group on Wednesdays or whatever your mom would take you to.
Read the scripture,
right.
Go to regular, because even, with my mom, it was like we would be invited to public rituals that were being offered openly as sort of, I mean, it was sort of like recruitment for certain covens or certain, groups within the Wiccan pagan spirituality. And, but I mean, there was never any kind of a commitment on my mom's part, or certainly on me and my sister's part,
Right.
to those specific groups, to those communities. And so not only was it, there wasn't any, real steps, but there was never any commitment demonstrated to specific community and being, fully committing.
Right.
And I mean, I think there are certainly reasons for that. And the also the idea of full commitment. I think I believe I remember my dad getting baptized when I was, a young boy, 10, 11, something like that. And I was invited to, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to make that commitment, and so I never made that commitment. It was very clear to me. It was made clear to me that this was a commitment that I had to be willing to make.
Right.
Because I was above the age of reason, or whatever it is. I don't know that they talk about that in the Christian evangelical churches that I was in, but I mean, it was made clear to me that it was my choice.
It seems likely, considering we're one of only a handful of faiths that believe in infant baptism. So
Right.
the likelihood of you having to be the one to make the decision probably pretty high.
Right. So I was never ready to make that decision, partly because it felt like a big commitment, and I wasn't sure that it felt right, and then also partly because I didn't want to turn away from my mom.
Right.
In that sense, it felt like it would have been a betrayal to my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, she would have disagreed with me, but she would have wanted me to make my own decision about it. And she's always told me that. And interestingly, when I talked to her last year and let her know that I was going to RCIA classes and getting ready to become Catholic, she told me just that. I disagree, and but I always wanted you and your sister to know that you could make your own decision about it, and that you should make your own decision about it. And sort of I reflected on that at the moment that she said that to me, and I said that's good, obviously, that we're asked to make our own decision. But I realized at that moment, I think, that I was really never given an example of what it meant to make a religious conviction and
Right.
to be committed to a faith practice. And that's something that's been missing, and I think it's very, very important in life. So fast forward a bit. I mean, I made it through, my young, childhood and teen years okay. I found some groups of people that weren't necessarily as motivated as other people. I wasn't sporty. I wasn't really academically driven. I mean, I did a great job in the things that I wanted to do well in school, but I didn't do a great job in the things that I wasn't super interested or excited about. So I just kind of got through and graduated high school, but I had also had a little bit of legal consequences when it came to drug substances. And so I had to go to a 30-day treatment program. It was outpatient. It wasn't super serious. And I didn't crash a car or, end up, almost killing someone or, nothing like that. But it was just possession and I had some consequences. And I thought, well, I'm lucky I'm still 17 because the consequences are less severe than if I were 18. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that, and I knew that these are legal consequences, and I don't want to be the, loser 20-something-year-old that is, whatever, hanging around high school and, hanging out with high school kids and in, legal trouble or whatever, because I had known them and spent some time around them, and they always, to me, seemed very unimpressive, and
Right.
I didn't want to be that person.
Right. Well, you're nothing if not practical.
Right, it doesn't make any sense. So I took things seriously in treatment, and what I learned there was that if it was likely that I had a problem with drugs, alcohol, substances, that I should probably just stop doing it altogether, and not just stop doing it altogether, and that would probably be hard if I really had a problem on my own, but that I should probably take some specific steps to gain God consciousness and spirituality. and those steps are outlined in the 12-step program. So I went through a 12-step program. I became a part of a 12-step community, and that really became, more or less my religion for my young adulthood. And that practice meant a lot to me, and it meant that I was, I tried constantly on a daily basis to turn my will and my life over to my higher power as I understood them. And I didn't have a really clear understanding of my higher power, but that didn't matter because I was still going through the motions and following a specific regimen. There was, daily meditations and regular commitment to going to the same meetings and fellowship and interacting with other people. And generally these were, decent people and good people to be around. And so I got a lot out of that. And it got me through college. Following those practices kept me on track, kept me sober, so I wasn't distracted by drugs. I mean, I spent time playing video games and watching shows, and maybe socializing more than I necessarily should have through college. But I mean, I got my work done, and I got out of there, and I got a job, and I always knew that I wanted more, looking for a sense of purpose, looking for a way to contribute and make a difference in the world was the whole, that was my whole guide, my whole sort of overarching goal throughout these years in my young adult formation. And what I ended up deciding to do was to get more involved in the pagan community that I'd been brought up in and made some good connections with, and really felt like formed my desire to be a contributing member of a broader society and community, to give back to community. That was the community I wanted to be in. It was a very open and welcoming community, and it felt really good to be a part of, and I wanted to be able to contribute to that. And I'm very grateful for that community, particularly, I think most significantly because it led me to you. And that's probably not the only good thing I got out of that. Certainly there are some good connections and a lot of good lessons, and even some decent role models in some ways. And I always knew that just because somebody might have faults doesn't mean that you can't learn something from them. And certainly a lot of people that I learned things from through those years. And I mean, even bad role models can be good teachers in certain ways if you recognize what it is you're learning from them. And so there was some of that too, and some of that eventually helped lead me to through more critical lens as an adult and becoming a father after we met and we got to know each other over those couple of years, and ultimately decided that we wanted to have more of a relationship and enter into a family bond together, which was really one of the most joyous decisions that I ever made. And I knew that part of what I wanted to make a difference in the world was to be a father. That was something that I always had a sense of. And I think for any criticisms I could have of my father, one of the things that he clearly valued was his role as a father. Whatever mistakes he might have made along the way, he's a little bit strict and overbearing and other things, but he took that role seriously, and everything he did, I know that he did out of love, and that was a good model for me to say that family is important, and that fatherhood is important, and so I decided I wanted to do that. So I set on the journey to become a father, and you helped a lot with that in a beautiful way. And I knew that I wanted to have a family with you, because it was very clear that you were very ready to be a mother, and fill in all the missing ingredients in what it takes to raise a person that I wouldn't know how to do, and maybe even a little bit more. You probably put a little bit more than your fair share into the equation over the years, but I am really grateful for that. What I came to understand as a father was that it's not only my responsibility to teach wisdom, but it's also my responsibility to teach morality and to give good guidance that way. And I remember back in college, I started to think a little bit more around questions of morality in the sense of how do I interact specifically as a man with women? And there was, definitely there's been an issue around sexual abuse and violence of women. And there's this gender issue and gender imbalance in certain scenarios in certain ways that sort of I was sensitive to over those years, and it's continued to guide me. And being a father to daughters is a big concern around those kinds of issues, sexual violence and sexual predation. But I mean, just as a father to boys, also demonstrating how I'm supposed to be treating women in life is really important too. So that's kind of like, I think the deepest I ever really got on morality was thinking about that, really. And I didn't have any other real guidance or real framework for morality in my life. And so as we continue the journey through parenthood, trying to get a sense of morality, trying to have a sense of community, trying to be a part of maybe some kind of spiritual community. It was there wasn't enough of a strong connection with the pagan spiritual community because it was very nondescript, very open and diverse. Too many different belief systems, nothing specific there.
Right. Well, not only that, but there were a lot of issues with regard to values that just didn't, with regard to sexual morality and stuff like that just didn't jive with our family either.
Well, and I think the reason is because there wasn't any kind of unifying moral structure or compass there. It was just a lot of different beliefs coming together to say, well, we're all, not Christians, is basically what it is. And so we're going to come together. And then there happened to be quite a bit of that, which now I understand the reason for that. We're not Christians. We're going to embrace immorality because that's human nature.
Right.
Which I'll get to that, I guess, kind of really where this Catholic faith started to really mean a lot to me was when I reevaluated me and my story through the teachings of the Catholic Church, which is amazing. But really looking at, but before even getting to that, it was about, first I had to become convinced that there was seriously something missing and something wrong with sort of the general morality of the community and the people that we were maybe connected with and trying to interact with. And it's not to say that every one of them have a flawed morality, but that's to say that the group as a whole certainly is lacking in that good moral direction. And there are a lot of societal factors. And this is sort of where I kind of intro things. People say, well, what got you to convert? And it's like, well, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in society. And things like where things that are real and truthful don't mean anything anymore. Objective realities are no longer, it's all relativism. And this idea of universality and, everything is everything. And I don't know, that kind of stuff used to feel good to me when I was a single guy, and it didn't really matter, and I could, have some kind of a heady conversation with a girl in college, and it was somehow intriguing to her, and I felt really good talking about it. And
you were woke, as the kids put it these
there we
days.
go. I mean, a little bit, and it was even before woke was a thing. It was like the pre-woke movement, and it was. It was pretty good. I was on fire with some of this stuff.
Pre-woke movement.
The pre-woke movement, yeah. And I could go on. I could wax poetic about this stuff. Like I was really in it. Like I got this, spirit. Yeah, it's really there. Spirit, love. I got the love.
Love is love.
And I was a sober guy in college, but this was kind of the stuff. And I used to go to the Christian fellowship too in college, and worship and stuff because it was fun. And they were. They were good people,
Right.
They weren't the guys sitting in the dorm, break room or the dorm study room, cussing and swearing about how difficult math was. They were, trying to be, good and pleasant and fun. So I'd spend time with them. I always knew that religious people had something, but I thought that I had more. I had it figured out. Like I don't need the religious doctrine. I just need the spirituality and people that are feeling good.
Right. You just need to call it spirit, and that's it.
It was good. It was good. But then, as a father, I realized that I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not, the spiritual teacher that that Christianity can point to. I'm not, and really, I figured out that the spiritual teacher and teaching that I'd been looking for, and in a lot of ways the ultimate father figure that I've been looking for, and even though he never was biologically a father, is that model of Jesus Christ, that priestly model of Jesus Christ. Because though he was not biologically a father to children, he was the father of the church, and that's very much what he did, and he gave specific guidance to those who needed it, and just as I'm called to do to my children. So yes, cultural phenomena and insanity led me into a place of really looking for answers and looking for the truth. And the 12-step spirituality sort of became lacking, and I got to a point where it had been years since I really ever spent any time, also with some career shifts and everything too, and sort of trying to interact with people on different levels really brought me to a place where I continually had to reevaluate who I was, how I was managing not just my time, not just my activities, but my mental state, my emotional state, and my spirituality in that sense, because I don't know, I mean, pressures of professional activity really kind of drive some of that, and then talking with people on a regular basis, and then constantly being aware of something missing, and there was always something missing for the last few years, and that really became really strong. I remember it was the fall of 2017 when I got to feeling really, really, really depressed.
Yeah, you were pretty, it was even really just difficult to be around you.
It was
that
bad.
Too. Yeah, it was pretty dark for you.
So, yeah, and I mean, there were days I didn't want to get up. And this is not the first time it's necessarily happened to me. I suppose that I've had different experiences with this, but it was the most severe that I've really ever felt. It just felt really in despair, really just completely lost. And I knew, sometimes it's like I really wish that I weren't here anymore. It would just be so much easier to just not be. But I knew that wasn't what I wanted. I knew that wasn't the answer. I knew that there was at least some semblance of an answer or a solution to that feeling that I had found when I was really active in the 12-step recovery program. So I went back to some meetings and really started evaluating more and getting a little bit more in depth on this, but also at the same time continue to have conversations with you about different ideas around social context and things happening in the broader world and how they relate to certain morality and principles and biological realities and physical realities and world realities and practicalities, all sorts of things that will continue to be talked about more in future conversations as we continue on. But
in our personal life and on the channel.
Exactly. So stay tuned, more to come. But all of those things really got me to say there's got to be something more, and I've got to be open to it. And I was never closed off to any kind of belief. I've frequently over my life said prayers to God, whatever I understood that to mean, to reveal himself to me more, and to be open to that, and whatever that God ends up being, in my life, that I've always been very open to that, and I think there's just a very real reason why it's only ever been the as deep as it has been for me. So that brings me to sort of the process. You had some of your own reasons for us going in to talk to the priest, but we were kind of feeling like the UU church that we were going to wasn't in line with the spiritual and practical realities we wanted to be teaching our children, overstepping some bounds on what was being taught around sexuality and sexual morality.
Right. And so just to backtrack a tiny bit, we started going to UU around 2012. Well, Gabriel was a baby. So it was maybe October or November of 2012. We had some friends that were going there, and they invited us to come, and so we went. And then we stayed there for a few years.
I thought it might have been 2011 even.
No, I think it was 2012 because Gabriel was a baby. Is when we started going. I'm pretty confident that.
No, it was that May Day while you were pregnant with him that we talked to.
Oh, maybe
Steve
you're right. Right, because then Lauren came when Gabriel was born. Okay, so I was a little bit wrong. About 6 months ahead of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started going that first year.
Right. So we were there, and I don't want to take focus off of you in this conversation, but I do want to.
No, you're right.
Am I?
Because you were pregnant in 2012 with Gabriel. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Remember those words. So I just a really quick tangent. Being open to going to the UU, for myself, it felt good right away because there was a sense of community that we were lacking, despite having some personal ties in the pagan community. There was a lot lacking that was present in the UU, but at the same time, I struggled almost right away from going there with the relativism that was basically everywhere. And anytime anything Christian was spoken about, it was still very relativistic. And I don't know how many times I'd look at you and say, their interpretation of scripture is completely wrong. It just drove me bananas anytime there was a message in the service about anything to do with Christianity or using Christianity as a metaphor for something or, spinning Christian teaching drove me bananas.
And I didn't really care too much because not only did I not actually know, but generally the message was, being loving and kind to others is really important. And that's about the only thing that's important.
But it's not the real, we came to understand that the lovingness and kindness, it was all superficial. It was lovingness and kindness if you believe what we believe.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's necessarily if you believe what we believe, but I think that the real concern and the real danger with loving and kindness is that it can't be at the expense of the truth.
Right.
And that's where it really came to a head was, the reality is that, and I think, really for me, the egregious issue more clearly for me at that time was, no, we don't need our teenage daughter being exposed to ideas about sexual masturbation and sexual
or being brought to a sex shop,
toy
that
store,
was the big deal.
And self pleasure and things like that. Like that does not need to be presented, especially not in a religious education format, because that is got nothing to do with what should be taught about the religious upbringing. And even if you talk about, the idea about, what is sex, and we talk about it all the time, and we do home births, which you probably know if you're watching the channel, and our children know how babies are made, how babies are born, and they understand all of that from a biological standpoint, and that's what sex ed is supposed to be. And if you're going to talk about potential relationships or things like that, then it should be based on what is the I don't know what to say, like what is the moral teaching and the moral standard around those kinds of things. But as far as I actually know, which I didn't spend the time to study it because I wasn't interested, and I think there's obvious reasons why I wasn't called to be interested in studying that in the UU church, but not to mention that there wasn't any conversation or anybody talking about it or any kind of talks about it or anything like that in families and things like that.
It was just always love is love, and families come in all forms, and, you know, just the general leftist thing of, you know, Rainbow Nation, basically, you know, and that just wasn't a thing for us. It just didn't. Again, with like same with the pagan community, having no sexual morality whatsoever, to egregious points, we were encountering the same thing in the UU.
Yeah. So then we decided to look at some Catholic churches because you were feeling more drawn to the Catholic faith. You actually spent time for most of a year, and then certainly for Lent in 2018, going to daily mass and things like that, leading up to Easter. And then it was after Easter that we started talking a little bit more, and you were really feeling challenged by the idea of going to the UU church at all, which we had still, you know, maintained going on Sundays. And then I said, okay, well, if you feel strongly about it, then we'll go and check out some Catholic churches. Let's do it.
Yeah, I can distinctly remember having gone to Palm Sunday Mass that in 2018, and then we packed up and went to the UU after the Palm Sunday Mass.
You specifically remember?
We went to St. Thomas More for Palm Sunday Mass, and then we went to the UU, and I specifically remember I was sitting in the social hall at the UU folding palm fronds, and this woman who I had interactions with in the past asked me what I was doing, and I told her I was folding palm fronds. She goes, "Oh, why?" I said, "Because it's Palm Sunday," and she's like, "What's that?" And I was like, "You're kidding me, right?" Like, UU, I mean, if you know UU history, it originally was a derivative of Protestant Christianity. And so for this woman to not know what Palm Sunday was, I was like, and then I remember this instant feeling of, we don't belong here anymore. We can't be here anymore. This is not where our family belongs. And some bad things will happen if we stay here. Like, that's literally what I felt, and I had a lot of anxiety. And my memory, I can feel that anxiety. It was just heavy, crazy heavy in my chest, and I didn't want to go back there anymore. Like, I didn't even want to step a single foot into that building for anything anymore. So then we had our conversations and started moving in the direction of looking at various parishes.
Yeah, so it was just, for me, it was sort of an experimental, you know, okay, yeah, let's go take a look, because I didn't necessarily know that you were having, I mean, I knew that the feelings were strong and that you were really frustrated with it, but I didn't know exactly why. I mean, I knew, though, I knew what, you know, your contentions were and things like that, but I wasn't feeling it in the same way. But I would say I wasn't feeling any kind of spirituality. I wasn't feeling that there was, you know, a negative spiritual path. I just wasn't feeling that it was positive spirituality either. It was social. They had a social hall, and that was really, you know, where most of the stuff happened. The sermons were okay, interesting, you know, to me most of the time, and I know that, you know, Grace liked them too. And making connections with different people felt okay. But I always felt like there was something missing, and it's spirituality. It's like actual faith and spirit, and where's God in this? So we went to some Catholic churches, and I don't know exactly how. I remember, you know, looking back, it was interesting to understand what I felt open to. I mean, I was open to the idea of this experiment of going to check out some Catholic parishes being a conversion for our family. Even though I didn't necessarily, I didn't feel like it was necessary. I didn't know, you know, anything about what I was necessarily getting into, except that that you had been talking about, in the context of social issues as well as things that we might hear messages at the UU, back to teachings of Catholicism, and that always seemed very logical and reasonable to me. So I didn't have any reason like that. I never had anything against the Catholic Church. I don't think I was ever worried about the sex abuse scandals or anything like that. Other people are and always have been, but that was never anything that came up for me in my mind. So we went to some Catholic churches, and I guess I was kind of intrigued by a few of them, and thinking, well, maybe this is. And I don't remember having any specific thoughts necessarily about them, but I was just really open to the idea of going to some different Catholic churches and kind of seeing what they're like and what the community's like and what they might have for our kids that might not be out of bounds, in a sexual manner and that kind of thing too. So I said, yeah, let's go see what they have to teach and to learn and to say and what's available for our family. Let's check it out. And I think at the time I said, yeah, maybe we could do like every other week, because at that time there's no obligation, which is, I guess, something that I don't necessarily like about that church, was that there's no obligation to the church necessarily. In the summertime, they go down to one service on Sundays because not enough people come, and that's okay, kind of a thing. But it should be the kind of thing that it's important. It's important enough that even if it's nice outside, you still go and observe religious practice. So I said, well, let's just go every other week. And that was just kind of, opening the door, and then we, decided that we liked one church enough to get the kids enrolled in the Vacation Bible Study in June of last year. Is it last year now?
Yep.
Gosh, seems like it's been a lot longer.
I know.
And they really, really liked it. Like, okay, cool, good people, good stuff, all right. And then we went and talked to Father about your stuff and, being a Catholic and potentially reverting and getting things sorted out. And then he asked me, just really nonchalant, would you be willing to consider, he said to me, would you be willing to consider learning a little bit more about the Catholic faith in the fall? There's a class that starts. And I can give you some more information about that. And all I said at that point was, yeah, I'm open to learning more about it. Sounds like it would be good to learn.
He also asked you if you were willing to allow the children to be raised Catholic. I don't know if you remember that.
Nope, I don't remember that.
Yep, and you said yes, that you were fine with that. You were open to that. And then Father asked him, and I just said this to Travis the other night, Father said to him, something that was pretty amazing that I thought, and that's the instant that I knew that Travis was going to become Catholic, was that mothers tell their children what they're going to believe and fathers show them. And I thought that was so incredible, and just instantly I was like, Father knows what he's doing, right?
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, and so we started going to Mass there at St. Agnes, and I don't remember how many times or when the last time we went to the UU church service was or anything like that, but pretty much since like last summer we've been going to the Catholic Church, and then Father made it pretty easy, and I was actually looking for it, but Father called when the class was about to start and made sure to get us recruited and on the list. And he was there the first night of the RCIA class in September, and but I had looked too, because I was curious. I wanted to learn. It seemed like there was a lot to learn, and it had been a long time since I learned anything that really mattered, that I took the time to study something. And so I was interested in learning more about it. And so I signed up for the classes, and then it became pretty apparent to me that this is pretty serious and that I should be going to regular masses and start taking this stuff seriously with the kids. And so, I got a big red book at RCIA class, which is the United States Catechism for Adults.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also got a copy of the actual catechism. Started reading stuff, started learning stuff, and then what really, I think the first thing that really did it for me was learning about that fun Latin word, concupiscence, and the idea that okay, what is the whole deal with this whole Adam and Eve thing? Because from Adam and Eve and Jesus dying and all that kind of stuff, what's the deal here? And my mom always told me that for her it didn't make any sense that she should have to feel guilty about what this original sin. Why would she have to feel bad about what some woman did years and years and years ago, or some man? So why is she sinful? Why does she need a savior? And that made sense to me too. And why do we need some guy to be killed for us? Why is that necessary? And what it all relates back to is that concupiscence, that. And I can objectively look at myself as a man today, as a child years ago, as a young man years ago. Concupiscence, that internal desire and inclination towards things that are sinful, that are not constructive, that are not useful, that are just for my own pleasure. That's selfishness. And that's really one of the roots in the 12-step recovery program is I've got a disordered selfishness. And that's something that I don't want to have, and I want to be able to overcome. And I know that I can't do it without more lessons. So it all made sense. Okay, concupiscence. This is something that nobody ever talked to me about. I never heard about this concupiscence idea, but that's what the Christian religion is based on, is that idea of concupiscence, and that's why all of this is necessary. And then the idea that Jesus needed to be the Son of God needed to come down. God needed to come down in the form of man with his divine self, and it's through getting to know the man Jesus that we can know the divine God and that Holy Trinity. So we had a lot of guest speakers in RCIA, and right in the beginning it was talking about the Holy Trinity and this idea of who is Jesus and why is Jesus both man and God, fully each. And it's because we as men can't understand God, and we can't hear God very well, and we can't have a relationship with God very well of our own. So it's through that relationship with Jesus Christ, the man, Jesus Christ, that I can come to know God. And I just remember, and through conversation with Nick also, around that same idea, the idea of being able to know God in that intimate way was so exciting to me that I said, yeah, I'm a little bit afraid, but I'm also even more excited about taking this journey. And then I knew I had a couple months I'd have to kind of accept to continue the teaching, to continue learning in this, so the rite of acceptance in the fall. And that came and went, and then I really I didn't look back. I knew that I was going to be Catholic.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible to just watch all of it. And I don't know, maybe it was after the kids were in VBS last year. We're listening to relevant radio every day, and things are coming up on the radio and we talk about it. Patrick Madrid will talk about this, that, or the other thing. I remember at one point you were like, this is not anything I'm ever going to believe. You actually said those words. And I was like, and that's okay. And I was trying not to be pushy, Apparently it was a little bit pushy, but trying not to be, because I can be pushy. But it was really just amazing watching just this whole unfolding. It was completely the Holy Spirit just really watching over our entire family through you, you know, and it was pretty incredible to just have this whole unfolding happen. And then before long, it was, you know, he was on a trip and I'm teaching the children and we're talking about the full armor of God, and he's instructing from the car from Georgia, and like it's just this whole thing. Like all of a sudden our home has a spiritual leader, and it was amazing. Like it was I'm still processing watching the whole thing. So I mean, words fail to describe the extraordinary.
Well, and I think the thing that I've mentioned quite a few times, but I really wanted to you know, emphasize again and re-emphasize is that. So I one thing that I want to make sure, I mean, I've mentioned it a few times, but I want to emphasize it that really the reason is, yes, God is important. God is very important. God is ultimately important. But what really drew me into the Catholic Church is that there's specific moral teaching, and very clear moral teaching, and very well-founded moral teaching, and very long-standing moral teaching that's been there for thousands of years now.
Right.
And that's really, really important. And there's all sorts of, you know, great things that have been put out by different popes, and there are men who are speaking about things that are important to men, to fathers, how we raise our sons. And I've been looking for that for years and not finding anything very clear, but the Catholic Church has that. And that was something that was hugely lacking in the 12-step community, because that's all like, okay, drug or addiction recovery for me is great and I have some spiritual steps, but how does that translate to my family? It didn't, was the answer. And I could have made something up, but it's really hard to have people believe in and practice something that has no backing and foundation and things like that. And that's another problem that I found with like evangelical Christianity. There's, you know, there's the Bible is important. It's very important. It's very important to Catholics. It's very important to all Christians. But the interpretations of the Bible, I mean, it can be very complicated. The Catholic Church has spent thousands of years with, you know, thousands, millions of people, you know, very carefully evaluating and considering, what does this mean? What is the teaching, and what are we supposed to get out of this? And I'm still learning a lot, but I feel like I've got real guidance there, morally speaking, and so that's why I'm Catholic.
It's really great. I'm really excited about it. I know you are too.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're pretty beaming. Like, it doesn't stop either. This beaming just doesn't quit.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And and certainly, I mean, this was a little bit longer than we necessarily intended to talk about this now. But there's a lot of details, and I think a lot of the details are fun to talk about. So, I mean, if there are any questions at all, I'm happy to elaborate a little bit more in future videos too. So just post any questions that you have, and we can touch on some details later. But we'll have a lot of other great conversations coming up. We're going to spend a lot of time and energy sharing our journey with you.
And there's going to be a couple of collaborations coming up too. And you can
Turn
also...
off the water, please.
You can like the Facebook page and find us on Instagram and Twitter. I'm at Tasha Rose Radmom on Twitter, and I don't know if you want to share your Twitter handle.
Oh, sure. I'm at Apollo Works FP on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook. That's professional, but yeah, you can find me there. I don't do a whole lot on it. I've tweeted at Patrick Madrid a few times, and he's liked it.
So like us and subscribe if you're interested in more and following what we have coming up and discussing this whole process and where we go from here, and more about our family, and we'll still have, you know, the homeschooling videos and kitchen cooking, you know, all of this stuff that my channel has had in the past, but we're going to kind of just hone it now more towards the focus of living in a domestic monastery and doing that. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fun journey.
So thanks for watching, hanging in here with us this long video. I'm going to try to edit it down a little bit at least. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.